But let's stay with our focus on the country's first digital census, which kicks off tonight. At Statistics South Africa, as you heard there from Nkosikhona Duma, and some of those field workers embarking on one of the most difficult national surveys. And of course, there are various hurdles that the team will have to confront in order to get the most accurate figures possible. We're joined by former Statistician-General Dr. Pali Lehohla. Dr. Lehohla, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. The first time that the census has gone digital, I imagine that in and of itself presents some challenges. But let's talk about just what the process that lies ahead for this team is going to be.
Well, I think it's excitement all through, and I think the detailed planning that Statistician usually engages will assure them of success in this venture. Even with the new digital devices that they are using, running a digital census, they said bye-bye paper and smile trees, because now you do not have to be troubled. I think with the testing that has been done around that, that will enable them to do so. What is very interesting is the multimodal nature of the enumeration, with a telephone, with a online capturing of the data and sending it through, and then with an iPad in their hands, and then handheld device, and coming into the household and answering the questions. Those three modes are very efficient, and I think improve the quality of the information much better than when we were running this paper-based. That's a very interesting part, but the limitation of devices is that while previously you would come with a piece of paper and leave it in the household so that it can be filled if people are not there, and then posted later, this time around you can't leave the iPad in the household. So these are the downside of this technology. But at least there is a process by which you can get the phone number, and then the person gets phoned, and then all the information is collected by phone. What it does really is to limit the heavy lifting of forward and reverse logistics. Instead of tons and tons of paper that has to be taken through, this time around you only have an iPad in your hand, and then that is the means by which you collect the data. Otherwise, it's the silent movement of data through the web where you actually capture the information online. But exciting nonetheless. I would always like to see feet on the ground. I would hate the day when this is digital and so silent that it only runs on the web. It loses the human touch that should be there. But I think, unfortunately, that's the direction in which, in the end, we will be in conducting censuses.
Of course, one of the big issues that Stats South Africa would be well aware of is around the credibility of the statistics that are collected. There are big questions about the number of people that we actually have living within our country's borders. And, you know, we were talking earlier on in the week just about the reservation that some non-nationals may have around being counted.
Well, I mean, the census has to be run under relative calm. And unfortunately, South Africa has been very, very stormy, and that storm has engulfed the whole country. Previously, there would be isolated areas where things are very stormy. The campaign on illegal immigrants and so on doesn't augur well for getting them enumerated. Normally, the Statistician-General will establish committees of people, of foreign nationals and locals, to arrange for enumeration. How well that may happen in the atmosphere of a movement of for illegal immigrants to be identified and be deported, it actually becomes a bit disruptive to the census operations. I saw that when the police disrupted a census in 1985 in Winterfeld, where the enumerators will come, in the evening the police will come. And that community said, oh, you come and collect data during the day so that the police can come and persecute us. So these connections get made of independent actors. So these are the things that I think the Statistician-General will be faced with. Besides the biggest challenge that all the censuses that I led in South Africa never had COVID-19. He is right in the storm of COVID-19, although at the moment things are calmer from that end. So
one of the things to also note, especially about a country like South Africa, is that there's been a lot of movement towards urban centers. So while the national debate may be centered on cross-border migration, we have a lot of interprovincial migration that is taking place. How does that affect the ability to collect and count everybody accurately?
Oh, no, yeah, well, I mean, you count by where a person's state was on the night of the census, which will be tonight, and therefore you anchor the people in that space. So you count them where they are, or you count them by way of where they slept on the census night. So you collect the details from whoever is in the household in relation to those people that slept in the household overnight. But your question is very interesting in that because Pali Lehohla asked the question, why don't you count us in December? If you do that, the population of the Eastern Cape will rise, the population of Limpopo will rise, and the population of Gauteng will actually be smaller. But because you have to count people by where they usually reside, spend most of their time, because that informs where the infrastructure should be, is very, very important. And therefore, cross-border migration and movement towards urban centers is the biggest thing that is there, and the census will reveal about.
When one looks at the government system, automatically the Department of Home Affairs comes to mind as being a department that would have a database on all the citizens who are in South Africa. But of course we know that that's not the case. Let's talk about some of the gaps that perhaps may exist between what the Home Affairs Department has on its system versus what Statistics South Africa and its workers are likely to discover.
Oh, yes, I think based on the enumeration protocols, how you count, counting protocols, you get people in households, in dwellings. So that protocol ensures that you cover everyone. However, if people are threatened and they don't want to reveal, they may hide, as it does happen, that those kinds of things happen. Home Affairs provides a database of people who have been registered from birth and those who have died. Very useful data set, because you can compare the number of people that are reported to have died in the year to those that have died in the population register. And from that, you can actually confront the accuracy of the census against what the record in the population register says. So it's also the case in the number of people that get born, because the census will ask also those questions of the number of children that were born in the last 12 months. So those are very important quality checks to the data. Coming to the question of the essence of the census, it brings to you household formation, consumption patterns within the household, needs for water within the household. Home Affairs only tells you this is the person who was born between these two people. It doesn't constitute for you a family or a household. And therefore it's not typically useful in connection with service delivery across space and time. Whereas the census actually gives you that information. They are both very important sources of information, very complementary in terms of what they do, but the census gives you a lot more dynamics around household composition, service delivery, allocations of resources, and where the gaps for space economy, service delivery, schools, and so on are concerned.
Former Statistician-General Dr. Pali Lehohla. Dr. Lehohla, I get a sense that you're having some fear of missing out tonight, that you wouldn't mind being out on the streets with some of the field workers.
I approach this with a lot of nostalgia, but of course,
Dr. Pali Lehohla, let me thank you so much for your time tonight.